were a child in the late 80s and early 90s, then there's a strong chance that you were introduced to the Ninja Turtles, a parody comic of Daredevil by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, with the foot as a parody of the hand and Splinter of Stick.
The comic debuted in 1984, and that had very dark beginnings in which saw the death of the Shredder in issue 1. The comic was adapted into the iconic 1987 animated series that turned the heroes in a half-shell into household names along with their voice actors in Cam Clark, Rob Paulsen, Townsend Coleman, and my personal favourite, Barry Gordon. I'm a Donatello fan. Even the late James Avery made a name for himself as the Shredder, long before he took the reins as Uncle Phil from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
The animated series was much lighter in tone when compared to the early comic books, as this was more aimed at children, and in turn the means to sell merchandise from toys to video games and other Ninja Turtle merchandise.
The show caused controversy when it was originally released in the UK and was rebranded as the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. At the time, there was controversy surrounding ninjas and related weapons such as nunchaku, which is why Mikey's signature weapon nunchuckers are replaced with a grappling hook. Even the intro sequence differs heavily to the original because of said controversy replacing ninja with either hero or fighting teens. It used a digitally faded logo as opposed to the animated blob that the American audience were introduced to. By the time the 25th anniversary release on DVD had rolled around, the lore regarding this band had long since disappeared in the UK, and the original US logo and intro appeared on the DVDs for the first time as it was originally intended.
Given the popularity swell of the franchise with the animated series into its 4th season by Fred Wolf Films in 1990, the time seemed ripe for a live-action movie adaptation. It's always a challenge to take a very beloved property and make a live-action portrayal of it because you have to be respectful to where it came from, but at the same time being able to put your own spin on it. I find that this movie did that, as the Turtles we're introduced to are recognizable, but with more than enough differences to separate them from their cartoon counterparts. Raphael is noticeably different from his wisecracking Saturday morning counterpart. He's pretty much the Wolverine of the Turtles, fight first, ask questions later, and also the first turtle to curse in the movie series. I wonder how he'd feel about seeing his next mutation version 7 years later. Damn! On second thought, maybe not.
Leo, I feel, is like a leader in training. He still leads his brothers, but is nowhere near the experience that we've known him from the comics and the animated series, and it's the supposed loss of Splinter very early in the flick that forces him to step up and take charge, since he was the head of the family at this stage. Donatello is not quite the techno wizard here. That doesn't become more apparent until the sequels. I think of him more as Mikey Light, acting as his partner in crime with cracking jokes and just looking for pork rinds to scarf. He does prove himself to be useful when fixing up an old farming truck with Casey Jones at April's old farmhouse home. Mikey is Mikey. What is there to say that we don't already know about this party-loving, pizza-munching animal? Michelangelo only has 2 loves in life: his family and pizza. Mikey is that friend you have that will just say things that will have you head-desking because it's just so embarrassing. He does have a few gems in...
Well, it was a shell of a good hit!
And
I love being a turtle!
The story seemed to have elements from the early comics and the TV series. April being a reporter and her jumpsuit was represented by a yellow jacket and being a reporter for Channel 3 News. The Turtles didn't have their turtle comms, nor their array of vehicles in the turtle van, nor the blimp, but this was likely due to the limitations of the budget, considering that this was an independent film. The elements of the early comics were present from the outset, as the movie poster said, "Hey dude, this is no cartoon." And that's true. The movie was heavy on the violence and weaponry, particularly between the Turtles and the Foot Clan, and this can also be seen in the destruction of April's antique store and the fight for New York towards the end of the movie.
I think it was necessary to have a very different tone and a much raw look as opposed to the light and bright, campy tone of the cartoon. But then, That is the difference right there. One is done for kids, whereas the other is being done for young families and comic book nerds that want to see a less kidified version of the cartoon.
But that said, even this story is a much lighter version of the original comics, as Splinter was a much less sympathetic version of the character, as he trained the brothers for a revenge mission to kill Shredder after he had murdered the brother of Hamato Yoshi.
The story itself has a very simple formula of where April is introduced to the Turtles and their mentor father figure in Splinter, and unwittingly, the Shredder is made aware of their existence and determined to stamp them out to further his criminal empire through his ninja clan. The Turtles suffer a great defeat in the loss of their mentor, a brother being injured, and 2 homes being lost in quick succession before recuperating and return stronger to face the Shredder to take back New York. And ironically, it's Splinter that deals the blow to Shredder after being freed by a teenager named Danny, that Splinter had made seeing that Shredder was not to be seen as a positive father figure, and Casey Jones. Splinter may have been the one to defeat Shredder, but it was Casey that delivered the crushing blow.
Oops!
Oh, that's gonna hurt tomorrow! I think what makes it work is that it's simple. The movie knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't stray too far from its comic book origins. Judith Hoag portrays the first ever live-action April O'Neil, and personally I would have loved it if she had reprised her role in Secret of the Ooze. I found that she portrays the Channel 3 news reporter with a lot of honesty after being introduced to 4 amazing friends with an equally amazing backstory. And given the fact that she was working with actors in suits, probably worked a lot easier for her because she wasn't having to use her imagination as opposed to a lot of movies done today that would have CG creations placed in post-production.
The resident human vigilante that doesn't have any scruples in dealing out excessive force to those that break the law. Casey is a former hockey player that played professionally for a year before getting injured and takes the law into his own hands in order to help curb the crime that seemed to be spiking in New York with the arrival of the Foot. I think this is a nod to the comics, as in the 2003 animated series, which a lot have said is a very faithful adaptation of the comic. Casey took to vigilantism because of one of his family members being led into the Purple Dragons, of which was just a branch faction of the Foot. So it's fair to say there's probably a similar reason here. Elias has good chemistry with Judith and Donatello, as he only interacts with Raph sparingly, even though it has been seen over time in the comics and the animated series that he's the turtle that he has most in common with due to the limitations of their tempers. This version of Tingrin is much more sinister than his animated counterpart, to the point there is little to no humanity in him. James Saito does well with the physical performances, and David McCarran does equally well as giving the Shredder a vocal performance that is equally cold and metallic as his helmet. Clash has very limited screen time compared to the rest of the cast, but the story makes the most of it, making it count for every second that the character is present. He serves as a motivational character for his students and Danny, a wayward high school student that sought refuge with the Foot Clan, but comes to understand that they aren't what he thinks it is. Clash gives a performance where Splinter imparts wisdom to his students, both turtle and human alike, allowing them to open their minds up and see the bigger picture.
Brian delivers the perfect tone as a rookie leader that still has to lead his brothers in Splinter's absence while still dealing with the loss of his father. A more rebellious and angry version of Raph, which was much closer to the comics. Josh delivers a solid portrayal where you feel the energy in his performance, from his angry battle cries to his damn!
Feldman was ideal as the bow-staff-wielding turtle. He makes Donnie quirky, likable, and fun to watch. This movie also started a weird trend with Donnie saying out-of-place adjectives after everyone that just didn't make sense until he would follow up with something that was more in line with what they were saying.
Bossa Nova! Bossa Nova? Chevy Nova? Excellent!
Robbie made Mikey very energetic, whether it was expecting pizza or seeing April on TV. And also imparting his own views on pizza delivery.
Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
Wise words indeed.
When you look back at the turtle suits that were created by Jim Henson's workshop, which also gave life to the Muppets and Sesame Street, the suits look very convincing to this day, along with the puppeteers that gave life to the characters' lip movements. It was probably not very comfortable for the actors performing inside the suits considering the weight and heat that came with it. In the years before major visual effects, this movie showed that the practical suits worked just as well. The practical suits returned for the 2 live-action sequels before the franchise went on hiatus for 14 years before the 2007 CG movie TMNT. John Dupre provided the score for this opening entry to the Turtles movie franchise, and I think it's safe to say that he did more than satisfactorily. The score gave a much darker and grittier tone when compared to the cartoon. Whether it was the return to the den, learning that Splinter had been kidnapped, or the first reveal of the Shredder, which had a very Darth Vader vibe about him, along with the
I am your father.
The soundtrack featured 2 numbers that fans took to heart, even to this day. 9.95 by Canadian R&B group Spunkadelic, and Turtle Power by Partners in Crime that became the signature theme of the movie. The music had a lot of raw and energetic vibes that still resonate with fans today.
29 years since Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles leapt from the shadows to the box office, it has become a cult hit with fans of those that saw it first time around to those that weren't even born in 1990.
It became the highest grossing independent movie of that time, as this was not released by any major studio as they didn't have any faith in it. Well, that all changed when it was released, as it grossed $202 million at the box office against a budget of $13.5 million. I don't know about you, but that sounds like a solid return for me.
It was followed with 2 sequels in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Due to the third being considered a disappointment, there wouldn't be another Turtles movie until 2007 with the CG TMNT, and there wasn't another live-action Turtles movie until the 2014 reboot, also called Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that was a lot closer to the 80s animated series.
The movie has been enjoyed for over a quarter of a century with releases onto VHS, DVD, and for the first time in 2014 to help celebrate the 30th anniversary of the franchise, its release onto Blu-ray. I'm MJ Knight, and welcome to Turtlevember. The end result being a parody comic of Daredevil by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. The Foot were a parody of the Foot were a parody of the Foot. So the Foot is a parody of the Foot, and the Foot is the parody of the Foot. Footception. Oh! That was weird. I find that this movie did that because the Turtles are very recognizable, but that said, with enough differences to separate them from their Zordon, how did I get into a Ninja Turtles movie? I don't know. Just wait for Hasbro and Warner Bros. To strike up a deal. Make it happen. We want Power Rangers versus Ninja Turtles, the good one, not that crappy one from Power Rangers in Space with Shosha. We do not talk about the Venus. And Raiden right now is going, don't talk about that, don't talk about that, don't talk about that. MJ, here's this L. And I can already imagine when I'm streaming this, it's just like, oh dude, why you gonna play me like that? I dealt myself an L, dude. It happens. That was a good blooper. The Turtles didn't have their Right. The Turtles didn't have their turtle comms nor their array of vehicles in the Turtle Bat. This is going to be a theme, isn't it? Alright. But that said, even this story is still much lighter than the original comics, as Splinter was a much less sympathetic. Bloopers, bloopers, bloopers. I love bloopers. Oh, can you imagine Lids going, oh damn, that you were right, Lids, that you were right. Have a presidency. Ah. Why'd I say that? I don't know. No, stuff it. I'm doing that as a voiceover only and just putting Splinter's picture there. Guys, that is way too much for me to read. I'm sorry. Even I have limits. Robbie made Mikey very energetic, whether it was... Robbie made Mikey very energetic, whether it were... fatigue...